Welcome to the Heavy Spoilers Show. I'm your host Paul, aka the guy whose puns always crease people up with a crap sense of humour, and this video we're breaking down 75 Easter eggs in Cobra Kai. Obviously, full spoilers ahead here, so if you weren't one of the 7 billion people to binge watch this in one day, then I highly recommend that you turn off now. Make sure you subscribe to the channel for videos like this each and every day, and please show some mercy by clicking the thumbs up button. With that out of the way, thank you for clicking this, now let's get into the breakdown. Okay, so the season opens with a news report that talks about the fight at All Valley High from the ending of season 2. In it we see a character known as Leonard Johnson being interviewed, and he says that he thought karate died out in the 80s. This is a fourth wall breaking comment, as Karate Kid was popular during the 80s and it's seen a revival in recent years because of this show. Cut to Johnny in a bar and he ends up having an argument with two guys, and this makes him punch through one of their car windows. Everyone's favourite nice guy and staple of society John Kreese actually did something similar in Karate Kid 2 when trying to attack Mr. Miyagi. The next school Easter egg happens when Daniel goes to the school parents-teacher conference. During it, the parents and panel are slamming karate, and when Daniel tries to defend it, a voice comes in and says, "I heard you were the real bully." This is actually the voice of Cobra Kai co-creator Josh Shield. I think it's playing up the fan theory that basically says Danny was the bully. This has been online for a couple of years now, and it's seen as something that inspired the show to tackle a lot of the themes that it did in the first season. Now whether you agree with that or not, Daniel was definitely bullied in high school, and at one point the Cobra gang wore skeleton costumes. Tori also dons a skeleton hoodie throughout the season, showing thematically that she is very much taking on the position of Johnny, while Sam takes on Danny's. Huge shoutouts to Superhero Nexus for sending me that, and I think it just laces the show with a lot more subtext. Amanda actually calls Tori Freddy Krueger, and this is because in that final fight, she of course used claws. After Johnny is arrested, he's taken to a cell, where a man shows him his foot and asks if it looks infected. This might be a reach, but I think it's a nod to Sum 41, who made an album of the same name. The band are big Karate Kid fans, and even tweeted once that Ralph Macchio better return for the reboot. Jump to Daniel journey into Cobra Kai, and we see a sign that says, "Fear does not exist in this dojo." Kreese actually said this to his students in the first film, and it's very much a mantra of how he sees things. There's also a cardboard cutout of the character, which I think is sort of playing on the one that was present in the first movie. Kreese also tries to mess with Daniel's mind a bit by saying that he doesn't blame Robby for the fight, as there's no such thing as a bad student. Mr. Miyagi used to say that there's no such thing as a bad student, only a bad teacher, and Daniel has also uttered this throughout the season, showing just how well that Kreese knows his enemies. Daniel says he's not going to fight him, but Kreese says it's inevitable, and this could be a play on the fan joke that Kreese is a cross between Thanos and David Hasselhoff. Hey, there's worse people to be compared with, namely me. Now Kreese also says that he will finish it, and though this might again be a bit of a reach, it could be a callback to him telling Johnny to finish Daniel at the end of the first movie. This is of course something that never happened, and it's led to this decade-spanning rivalry that's ruined everyone's lives. But it's made Netflix a lot better, let's be honest. Now in the opening of episode 2, we catch a bully arriving at a diner with his friends. He says his car is a piece of junk and that he's gonna get rid of it, and of course this would end up becoming Mr. Miyagi's. Now this bully is deliberately put in place to make you think that it's a young John Kreese. To make this even more apparent, the bully is actually played by Jesse Covey, aka Martin Covey's son. Now the car appears throughout the series, and during episode 3, Daniel talks about how it was a present from Mr. Miyagi. This is a good example of art imitating life, as the studio actually gave Ralph the car when filming Wrapped. This bully tells his friend that you can't show people mercy, and it is of course a mantra that Kreese would adopt, making the misdirect even more misdirectional, if that's even a word. Now when fighting them outside, Kreese sweeps one of the gang's legs, and this is something that he would tell Johnny to do in Karate Kid 1. This sweep the leg tactic is later used at the church when Johnny goes to see his old buddy, old pal. Episode 3 is called Now You're Gonna Pay, which is what Johnny said to Daniel during the skeleton Halloween fight that the Tori hoodie links back to. We catch Robby reading Lord of the Flies, and this book is basically about a gang of kids creating a new society in which they have certain rules in order. The kids are pretty much running amok at All Valley High, so maybe this is a reference to that. Now Johnny goes to a job interview and has to admit to assaulting minors, which is of course a nod to his fight in the first season, during which he saved Miguel. Jump to episode 4 and we see the Cobra Kai kids trying to kick a bonsai tree off the top of a post. Though Hawk gets around this, bonsai trees are of course synonymous with Mr. Miyagi, so Kreese getting them to do this further hammers home that Miyagi-Do and Daniel are the enemy. Hawk also does some football tricks which are very similar to what Daniel did in the first film. This idea of football, and yeah, I'm calling it that and not soccer, don't at me, is laced throughout the episode, and it even leads to a big fight on the pitch, which further ties back to this Easter egg. Cobra Kai also show up on motorbikes at the fundraiser, and this could be a nod to how they arrived on the beach in the first film. Now Daniel also reunites with an old flame, who says that many tried to marry her, but none of them fought to the death, which is of course a reference to the fight that we see playing out in flashbacks. The pair go for a drink, and you might notice the ice cube holder, which looks very similar to the ice blocks that Daniel had to break in Karate Kid 2. Now this bit kinda segues across episode 4 and 5, and Kreese visits Robby and calls him son. I really wish he was my dad, however he does tell him about his real father, namely the time he drew a kid named Vidal at the Old Valley. Vidal won the 1981 tournament, but from that point onward, Cobra Kai dominated. This is actually part of the lore that led up to the first film, and the actor behind Vidal is credited with coming up with the crane technique. This martial arts master even doubled for Mr. Miyagi at points during the film, so it's great that they're still giving him little nods here and there. Kreese tells Robby that the mumbo jumbo Mr. Miyagi teaches might score him some points in the tournament, but that it's completely useless when used in real life. As we know from the films, Cobra Kai were big bullies outside of the ring and used to beat a lot of people up. However, Danny managed to beat them in the tournament, which does kind of solidify that Kreese is sort of telling the truth here. Now, episode 4 and 5 has a return of the villain Chosen, but he becomes a good guy and actually tells Daniel about the secrets to the pressure point technique, which is something that is laced throughout karate. I kind of feel like this is going to end up becoming the key to defeating Kreese and Cobra Kai in season 4, but obviously let me know below if you have any other theories. Daniel also uncovers a document that details the crane technique, which is something that of course popped up time and time again in the franchise. Now you might notice that in these flashbacks, a little one-handed drum is used, and Miguel actually picks one of these up at Miyagi-Do in episode 9. Chosen gets Danny back for honking his nose in the kill moment, and it's a hilarious little callback, even if you haven't seen the original. There's also the 1988 swimsuit edition, which no doubt got Johnny through some lonely nights without Ali. You might not want to read that if the pages are stuck together, Miguel. Now during the Funhouse fight, Hawk breaks, yes he breaks Dimitri's arm. Now it's pretty brutal, and this is actually riffing on the Miguel and Robby fight from the end of season 2. Miguel could have done it, but instead he let Robby go, which led to him getting kicked over the railing. Hawk doesn't leave anything to chance, and he breaks Dimitri's arm, showing what could have happened to Robby had Miguel have not been such a nice guy. Now at the end of the episode, we also see a return of the sign "Fear does not exist in this dojo" when Amanda goes to Cobra Kai. She calls Kreese Rambo, and Kobe was actually in Rambo First Blood Part 2, so this is a nice little nod to his prior work. Kreese also says "I'll like that," which is something that he did in the first film. In episode 6 we also see Miguel's rehabilitation, and to me this is sort of riffing on the real life story of Bruce Lee. In 1969, Bruce injured his back because he didn't warm up properly. This caused a lot of nerve damage, and he was actually told he could never practice martial arts again. However, Lee healed, and over time he went on to have the massive career that we all know him for. This journey is of course very similar to the one that Miguel travels on, so I think they're kind of hinting here where things could possibly go in the future. We also catch Danny and Sam out fishing, and they talk about the time that Sam learned balance. This is a reference to a similar scene in the first film when Mr. Miyagi took Danny out in a boat. Daniel takes her to where the All Valley tournament is and says that this is where he almost lost to fear. This is a big reference to the Karate Kid 3, which this season is clearly paying homage to, and I do kind of get the feeling that it's going to pay off even more in the next one. Now this season itself is actually littered with the villain from that, namely Terry Silver, and for all those who are still in doubt whether the soldier is him or not, he's actually name dropped in the Vietnam scenes. I kinda have a theory that Silver actually started to don a ponytail as a tribute to his fallen friend, but yeah, whether that's true or not, I really don't know. But Alongside Kreese, Silver was of course one of the big bads, and Mike Barnes was their student, which made Danny almost lose to fear. Not to go off too deep on the fan theories, but there are some that think Tori will be revealed as being related to Silver or Barnes, but that still remains to be seen. We also see who Kreese learned martial arts from, and his techniques are actually repeated in The Karate Kid. Johnny creates Eagle Fang Karate, and even wears a red jacket at one point, which looks very similar to the one that he wore in the first film. I cut to episode 8, and this entry is called The Good, the Bad and the Badass, which is of course a play on the film The Good, the Bad and the Ugly. Hey, they can't all be multi-layered Easter eggs, yeah? Just let me have some easy ones. Now in this, Daniel says that Mr. Miyagi used to tell him that if you're looking for revenge, you can start by digging 2 graves. Not only did the character say this in the first film, but this saying dates back to ancient Chinese philosopher Confucius. The philosopher is credited with saying, "Seek revenge and you should dig 2 graves," so it's clear this idea of doing things to get even are not laced in Miyagi's teachings at all. Jump to episode 9 titled Feel the Night, and this is actually a song from the soundtrack of the first film. It could be heard in the background of Daniel and Ali's first date at golf and stuff, which is mirrored here when Johnny takes her out. You might also remember this location from the first season, as it's the same place that Miguel and Sam went for their first date. Before replying to Ali, we can also see in Johnny's messages that the names Shane Keller and Mallory Young appear amongst them. Shane and Mallory are both producers on Cobra Kai, so this is a nice little nod to the creative team behind the series. Ali's parents' house is also exactly the same to how it was in the first movie, but hey, who wouldn't want to live there forever? Now not long after, Sam says it's not 1984 to her dad, and this is a reference to the year of the first film's release. Speaking of that movie, Johnny admits that he screwed up and not only ruined Ali's friendship, but also her radio. Johnny actually did this in the first movie, and it's one of the reasons that Ali probably ended up with Danny. Radios weren't cheap back then. Now Ali also jokes about punching him in the face, which you may remember from the first film, and hey, maybe she was the bully the whole time. Now when Miguel meets Daniel during this entry, they also discuss several moments from the first movie. This includes the illegal kick which Danny used on Johnny, something that's still up for debate, and there's mention of the water hose incident, which of course is another one of Danny's less friendly moments. Maybe he was the baddie after all. Now Johnny arrives at the country club to find Ali talking to Danny. The position of this is very similar to the first film, except that the roles were reversed with Danny being the one who discovered them. However, unlike Danny, Johnny doesn't get covered in spaghetti. Now this is actually referenced in the next episode, in which a waiter almost spills several bowls over his white suit. This is the first time that Danny and Ali have met in several decades, and she says that it's funny that this is the place the pair bumped into each other. Now episode 10 is called December 19th, and this is the day of the All Valley tournament in the first film. However, whereas that saw Danny and Johnny facing off against each other, this entry sees them joining up at the end, showing that things have come full circle. Throughout the episode, Hawk wears a red jacket, and this could be a callback to Johnny's, and it does sort of hint at the journey he goes on in this episode, realizing that Kreese is the bad guy. We see where Kreese got the idea of cobras from, and using them as a symbol could even be him conquering his fear and deeply rooted PTSD. The season ends with Kreese calling what I presume is Silver, but obviously let me know your thoughts below on whether you agree with me or not. And you better agree with me, or the bloody mouse gets it. Anyway, that wraps up our list, and I just want to give a huge shout out to everyone who commented on our last video and dropped some of these Easter eggs. I know there'll be a ton in this that I missed, so if you spotted some that I didn't, then please drop them in the comments below. As a thank you for interacting with the video, you'll actually get entered into a prize draw for a copy of both The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings 4K box set, which we will be announcing on the 30th of January. Like I said, you just have to make sure you subscribe to the channel with notifications on, and leave a comment below, and hey, you're entered into the prize draw. Now the winners of last month's competition are on screen right now, so if that's you, then message me on Twitter at Heavy Spoilers. If you just want to come chat to me, then the links to our socials are in the description, and you can also support the channel by clicking the join button, and as a thank you, you get videos like this early. If you want something else to watch, then make sure you check out our breakdown of the ending of Cobra Kai Season 3, which will be linked on screen right now. We go over all the ins and outs of the series, so it's definitely worth checking out if you have any questions on where things could be going. With that out of the way, thank you for sitting through the video. I've been Paul, and I'll see you next time. And remember, no mercy, strike first.